How did that happen?
I was made redundant. I was really disappointed by. So Silverstone, going back to those days, was in difficult financial straits, didn't have any money. And
can I ask why that was? I mean, you might not know because of your position, but obviously it's busy. Was it just because the amount of investment going into something like that? Like, how does that happen?
No, I mean, I think probably the amount that it had to pay for the Grand Prix was extraordinary. And motorsport didn't have the same level of following, I suppose, back then as it did today. Okay. So the smaller races probably, I mean, I wasn't, I'm speaking probably out because I wasn't at that level of understanding the kind of balance sheets for the business. But, the British Grand Prix, probably didn't make a whole lot of money because Formula One, we had to pay Formula One so much money to host that race. So the footfall for the Grand Prix wasn't as high as it is now. So I think it just,
it's just hard.
It's just hard. Yeah. And
kind of, it's the wrong way around, if you will. Like the Grand Prix was still amazing at that time. Yeah. But circuits weren't really benefiting
they weren't benefiting from it at all. And so I think I survived 3 or 4 rounds of redundancy as new owners came in and took over. So Brands Hatch bought the circuit at one point, and then Octagon bought it. And when Octagon bought it, I was let go, unfortunately. And I was really devastated. I'd been there for nearly 3 years. And as I said, I loved it. And I was kind of distraught. It was like, what am I going to do now? This felt like my home. I felt like I'd found a great job that I loved doing. So I was a bit miserable. But I'm not very good at just sitting around on the sofa waiting for something to come along. So I took myself to Williams like I normally did and said, can I just come and work in the travel office while I find something else?
Oh, right.
I didn't want to just be sat at home twiddling my thumbs. Yeah. So I went and annoyed Dickie and Donna again. I booked some flights, probably made, as I said, more of a nuisance of myself than anything else. But at the time, when one day was booking some flights, and Jim Wright, who was our head of marketing at the time, phoned me, and I was like expecting him to say, can you book me a flight somewhere? He didn't. He said, my press officer has just walked out. How do you feel about coming upstairs? Marketing was upstairs. I was on the first floor, coming upstairs and being a press officer. And I was like, well, I don't think you've asked my dad, have you?
Had he?
And he said, no. And I said, well, there is no way he is going to say yes to this. And Jim said, oh, don't worry, leave it with me. I'll call you back. 2 minutes later, Jim calls me back, sounding a little sheepish, and goes, your father said no effing way.
Really?
Yeah, excuse my French.
Wow.
Dad was not amused. And Jim said, but don't worry. I said, Jim, I told you so. Dad doesn't want me working here. That's okay.
What did that actually feel like for you? Like at that time, where obviously you're at an age where you can understand that, like, from seeing your dad and seeing the way he interacts with people and trying to understand him from what I've seen, watched and read and listened to, for you that must have felt a bit weird in terms of that he didn't really want you there. I know it's jokey and jovial, but how did it actually feel for you? Did you feel like you're saying there was never a chance to get in there and like it was a bit jokey and all that kind of stuff, but if that was me, I would feel pretty down about that in some way. I don't know, like
I didn't.
Interesting.
Which might be weird. And I say that now. I mean, this was 20 odd years ago. It's quite a long time. Yeah. I don't necessarily remember my actual emotions, but I don't think it bothered me because I'd been so, like, not trained, but, I understood that, that wasn't...
You had a deeper understanding of the thought process.
Yeah, it wasn't an option. And I did not want to put my dad in that situation. My dad was... Jonathan, my older brother, was already working there. And I didn't want, my dad to feel uncomfortable around nepotism. It's not right. He had at the time 350, 400 people working for him. And so he's just going to give jobs to all his kids. These people are serious people that are given jobs based on merit and who they are and a thought. People line up to get jobs in Formula One. And so what if dad's going to give his daughter a job after giving his son a job? That doesn't reflect well on him. And leaders, when they do that kind of thing, they can lose respect. People don't like it. It causes a bit of upset. And, I understood that. I understood that from my dad. And I didn't, as I said, I didn't want to put him in that position. And I was, I'd be all right. I would go and find something else. Something would come up. I was scouring PR Week magazine. I don't even know if that still exists, but, that's... I was looking at FMCG jobs. That probably does acronym, probably doesn't even exist either.
It does, no,
does it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I thought I will find something, and I'm just here as a stopgap. But Jim said that phone. He said, "Don't worry, I'm gonna try. Let's give this a try. Let's see if we can put some pressure and lobby your dad for a bit." And I said, "All right, good luck with that. I'll keep booking my flights." And anyway, I don't know how long it took Jim. I've always kind of quoted, I think, about 3 months it took him to persuade my dad to give me a job, or to give me that. It was a junior press officer job. And anyway, Dad did finally capitulate and offered, well, he didn't, through Jim. I was offered the job, but I was put on a 6-month probation rather than the traditional 3. And I have to say, my dad thrashed me for the first 6 months of my life. I mean, he was pretty tough on me, but quite right. And I wanted that as well. I wanted to prove that I deserved the job, and I wanted to make my dad proud. I suppose I didn't want him thinking, what have I done? I took this really seriously. I was the first person in the office. I was the last to leave, and I worked my backside off to prove. And I think I probably always had that mindset because I was always the boss's daughter. I always felt I had to work, or try at least, and work harder than everybody else to prove that I deserved to be there and to not, I suppose, embarrass my dad.